structure. So you're not necessarily keeping everything on site. Some people have chosen to retain more and possibly even use it for landscape irrigation. But our requirements are, the strict requirement is that the post-development is no worse than the pre-development.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Didn't make it
But you know, over time, that should, because there are some people that have chosen to go further, that over time that should have a positive impact on the amount of water flowing into our storm drain system.
Okay.
Okay. So now, we identified some drainage issues, starting with the Atherton channel, and we observed the severe erosion and loss of conveyance, and also for some of the bridges and culverts crossing the Atherton channel, their capacity, calculated capacity, is actually less than Atherton channel. So those culverts, those bridges may function as the bottleneck that may create the bottleneck and create some of the overflow issue. So, and these two pictures are from our recent visit to the channel. And as you can see, the left side close to a culvert, that you see the bottom has already completely fallen away, and on the right side, and the bank is completely exposed to some root and cause the reduction of the conveyance area. So these are just some of the representative pictures of Atherton channel. And then the second, this slide represents some localized flooding and ponding. As we discussed with Gordon and Mike and Steve, how we define it as localized flooding and ponding. Because we have to be clear of one fact, that in the town of Atherton, you do not have any flood control system, which means anything more than 10 years flow, it will flow on the street. The street will be primarily used as the conveyance area. And what we identified as localized flooding and ponding means if the storm event, the past 48 hours, you still see that area, you have the ponding issue. And then we recognize that as the localized flooding and ponding. And these two pictures represent some of the property damage and the roadway intersection localized flooding issue. And that issue still, you know, this year is a drought year, so we're not able to take some pictures. So this picture are from some historical pictures, not from this year. But we did talk to Gordon and Mike about the December 2012 the school flooding. And that actually, December 2012, that was 18 to 20 years event, if you correspond to the storm event. And the school, unfortunately, is located on the flow path. The flow path in hydrology means that the flow would generally, overland flow would concentrate to that and find its way to the channel. And the school is actually located on one of the flow paths. And because in this December 2012, that storm event is more than 10 years. And I read some of the literature. They concluded that the storm event is in the range of 18 to 20 years event. So it is foreseeable that the school year would suffer from some flooding, and also those would be categorized as localized flooding.
You know, so I think the distinction there is that unfortunately school construction is not regulated by local agencies. And they built their new facility within an area that is going to be flooding. So the fact that they got flooded out was a very predictable event.
This is Los Lamitas?
Yes. And it's really the new construction that they did.
They've done a lot of construction since then, actually.
Well, and so that's, you know, the fact that they got flooding is very predictable. What was not predictable was when and how much. But when you build within an area that's going to be, you know, that's going to be an overflow for flooding, you can predict that you're going to
get some water. The river runs through it, right?
Yep.
Renamed school.
So that means that the school is located on a flow path. I mean, flow path means it's a low area that will be flooded for sure. So, construction of the drainage improvements since 2001, it has an elevated localized ponding and flooding. And we calculated there are 26 projects has already been completed. And in our new study here, we propose some new drainage improvements. This will further improve local condition and maintain the current drainage system. And for the town to have 10-year or higher protection level, you have to invest in new drainage facilities. That's basically, last time we met with Gordon, Steve, and Mike, we talked about the new facilities, like education as one of the options. So again, this is a slide that may need a lot of explanation about our proposed improvements. And we have the improvements. Let me talk about the summary of the improvements first, and then get back to this slide, and then so you will have much more idea.
We need to be able to see it when he's presenting it, so,
Oh, thank you.
so it's okay.
Okay.
I figured you put in the chairs.
So let me get back to the slides, to the improvements. So let's go to the slides talking about what we are proposing here and what's in our mind, and then we get back to this. So we recommend 39 projects, and the project cost ranged from 17K to 20 million, and the project categorized in 6 groups, and they are Atherton Channel restoration, and El Camino Rail interchange flood relief, Midfield Marsh traffic lane flood relief, and some of the Collector Street flood relief, including the new storm drain and upgrade existing storm drain, and also some of the Collector Street and lane flooding, swales or burns to prevent the private property from flooding. And we prioritize the 39 projects we propose based on considering the 5 factors. First, to emphasize the health and safety of the public, and then move the priority of that project to a higher number if they benefit the greatest number of individuals. And we also consider avoiding property damage. And the project we propose here fundamentally is to maintain the drainage system. It's not trying to increase the protection level. And also we're recognizing the downstream constraints. For example, like the Redwood Channel, you cannot release more than 900 CFS down to the Redwood Channel. And it may be based on the downstream flooding or some of the permit issue. So those are the constraints that we are facing here.
Can I just ask one, just to make sure I understood what you were saying?
Yeah.
The second one from the bottom, to maintain the drainage system, not to increase the drainage capacity or improve the drainage system?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to, I think we try to be positive for this presentation, but in our discussion, technical discussion with Gordon, Steve, and Mike, and at that time we used one word, deteriorating. I mean, the drainage, the town drainage system, they have limited protection level, and also we recognize, for example, like the Atherton Channel, you lost of the conveyance, and you have some severe erosion, and you have some embankment loss problem, and when we claim you have 7 years capacity, I think that is just true on the numbers, because in reality you may not have that 7 years capacity. And what we propose here is to restore that capacity to the claim, the numbers. So that's why we use maintain drainage system.
I don't know, well, I mean, $20 million just to maintain our existing level?
I think we need to get to that point, that
Later?
yeah, that later.
I'm
Yeah,
jumping
because that
ahead.
one,
I'd like to see us improve our drainage system, because I think that even with the deterioration of our drainage system, just kind of making it back to a 7-year seems a little short-sighted.
yes.
And when I looked at the report, because it had actually a little more detailed list of the projects, I didn't see one that I know we've talked about a little bit that said if we have higher, a major flood, that we could maybe open up some gates or something and divert water onto the playing fields in the park or into other areas. And I didn't see those in there, so are those gonna be in the final report that, that there would be these safeguards where?
Detention basically.
Yeah,
Well, that's the 10-year deal.
We-
We talked about it in the last
Right.
meeting.
We've asked them for that as a separate part of the study. So this part was because the initial work was focused on our current system. Because that's not our current system, it is not part of this, but because council has asked for it separately, the 10, and then we're also asking for a proposal of 25, they will be doing that as well, and we can incorporate that into the study.
But the 10-year detention was part of their,
Yes,
That's
yes,
in
the
there.
10-year was, that's correct. And you asked for some additional details.
Okay.
To make the channel a little bit more riparian in form and function to accommodate the 10, 15, 25-year overflow, rather than having it just a box culvert.
I like the $17,000 number.
You're not gonna
Lock
get
them in now.
anything for that. You're gonna get what you pay for.
It'll be worth it.
Okay,
It's a sign,
Okay.
a sign that it's like Atherton.
So based on our evaluation factors,
Yeah, that's a good one.
we recommend 5 tiers of projects. So the tier 1 is to protect the health and ensure safety of the public. And the tier 2 is to avoid damage to private property. And then the tier 3 are those areas that they may need to install new storm drain to avoid flooding. And then tier 4, those are the projects that we identify there are flooding issues for area that they already have a storm drain system, but the size of those storm drains are undersized. And when we say 10 years for the storm drain, they may not have 10 years capacity. So those are falls to tier 4. And then tier 5 are those remaining projects from 2001 master plan. And I think for the short term, when I say short term is like 5 to 10 years time frame.
Can you put that last one up back, because it doesn't match the slides?
Sure.
And I could just make a quick note, thank you.
Sure.
so can I ask, do you know how many remaining projects we have from the 2001 master plan?
Yes.
I apologize.
How many? I think we have.
How many?
Yeah, how many projects remain? Let me read it through. We have 8.
8 projects?
Yes, 8 projects remaining from 2001.
The 8, those are 8 projects that fall in tier 5.
In tier five.
Some of the projects are included in tiers 1 through 4 from 2001.
Oh, okay, all right.
The tier 5 really is everything else, something that didn't fall in tiers 1 through 4, but when it's identified in 2001 as a needed project.
Okay.
And there are 8 that fall into that last category. It's sort of like everything else.
Everything else?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna go to
Yep.
this now.
So for the short term, I mean, limited to 10 years, maybe 5 to 10 years, and we recommend the first 3 tiers project to be implemented. And we identified tier 1 was 2 projects, and they have a $5 million price tag, and basically is to upgrade to reline Aspen Channel eliminated erosion problems, and also upgraded the segment of Atherton Channel adjacent to the school, because those pose some life-threatening to the school, to the safety issue to the school children's. And Tier 2, we have 7 projects.
Excuse me, just when you refer to the school, are you referring to Los Lamitas School?
Yes. Yeah, I refer to the December 2012 flooding issue related to the school. Yes.
Schools would be interested in doing that.
Yes.
And then the Tier 2, we identified 7 projects, and we have a price tag of 10 million. And then for the Tier 3, we have 10 projects and with a price tag of 6 million. And for the Tier 4, Tier 5 projects, we consider them as long-term, which means maybe like a time window of 20 to 25 or 30 years, and along the way to improve. So now, let's get to the slides, because I think it's only 5 minutes to 5, and I really want to take time to introduce the projects. And we identified 39 projects into 6 groups. So this slide,
maybe, given the time constraints, I'm going to suggest, because we have the council assembled here, this might be a good time, rather than going into the detail, to just check in on questions and see what additional investigation or information the council would find helpful to guide your, the remaining work, if I may.
thank you. So our next step is to evaluate new drainage facilities to provide 10 years and 25 years flood protection level again along Atherton Channel. And then we're going to hold the second public meeting. And with that, we are seeking your feedback, questions, and
So this is a lot of work. Where I feel the most challenged by it is that the detail in both this graphic and the previous one is very difficult to discern, and this is really important stuff. So if we're going to get a large number of residents at the next public hearing, I would like them to be able to really understand what is being recommended, particularly as it applies to areas that they may be impacted. And I think that you guys need to work, Gordon, in figuring out how to make these presentations so that they're easily digestible, because they're very hard to understand. We got to it. I think I understand what you're proposing, and I think it's really important, but I think it needs, to not lose people, we're going to need to explain it to them in a more clear way.
okay.
Councilman DeGole, I would support that. I've been sitting here looking at these 2 things, and I know the area, and I have a background in geography and geomorphology. You're not going to, nobody will know what this looks like. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that you gotta break it down a little bit. I mean,
Put
although.
a storm drain in front of my house, or you can put it in front of Carrie's house,
Right,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks, Jim. How'd you know I had water?
I knew it was one of these ones.
It all runs down the line.
So in your flow analysis, where you're showing the flow going into the channel and Shelby Lane and so on and so forth, is there a way you can break it down a little bit more to more, let's say, color coded to areas, identifying areas, and therefore we can start looking at it as impact areas, that maybe even as we move into this next phase, special assessment areas, something that if we're going to move forward, these are big numbers, and we obviously don't have these big numbers. So we've got to come up with some plan of attack on how we're going to attack the $20 million maintaining our existing system numbers, which that's just at a minimum. So I think that one of the ways that we're going to have to look at this for how we plan for the future is in our next hour, we'll also be discussing some special assessment areas and so on and so forth. So if you can give us some clarity, because residents are going to want to understand, where they're impacted and if they're going to be jumping into this, the Los Niños zone. And we obviously have neighboring jurisdictions, and those conversations can start yesterday about, how do we partner up in getting together and tackling some of these problems. So it would be helpful.
And we need staff to look into earlier versus later on the Los Lomitas area, the school who built into the flood zone and now has a problem, they need to contribute, if not fund, fixing the problem.
One of the advantages of this is that it's going to come up with a lot of information that allows us to speak to other agencies and be informed about what we're talking about. Also, I'd point out, this is a $40,000 study. It's not a $400,000 study. So we want to make sure it's far enough up, above the ground that we capture everything. And in some of the more detailed analysis that you're asking for may need to wait for a subsequent study.
Sure.
But one of my hopes is that in looking at how the channel functions, is there any way that, again, because the channel used to be much more riparian, and then we had the development and it became smaller and smaller, and now it's like this little, culvert. It's a channel, and the water runs fast, and it fills up, and it doesn't have any place to go until it fills up and overflows. Is there any way that we can look at how to widen the channel or make it more, I would say, riparian in areas to help alleviate the fast running, flow of it?
That's definitely available from an engineering standpoint of view, but it will take a lot. It will take a lot of efforts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this falling into the stream restoration.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we have just finished one of the stream restoration for city of Santa Rosa, and the project is put on bid, and we'll start construction this July.
Great.
Yeah, so in that way, they have the same design with more repairing and with more ripple and also bioengineering protection instead of hardening.
Right.
And not sacrificing the flow conveyance. But that comes with, the first thing is the right of way, the expanded right of way. And I understand that may become one of the most challenging issue for the town. That is that expandable? If it is expandable, I think what you proposed here, that we can regulate the velocity and the flow, and also through the detention in the future, to the detention basin, it will have two protections to the top. First, to reduce the flow into the channel at the low event, and then when you have the low flow, and then you would have a low velocity in the channel, and then you have more room to flow. The second is when it's designed for 10 years or 25 years, and then at that time you may have some high speed, high velocity through the channel, but that is just a one-time flow. It may not hurt the entire channel. So we can do all this type of check and calculation analysis, provide some conceptual design to the town for that. Yeah.
Well, the riparian component of it, at Howard Farmer Park and other areas down that way would be an easy solution to return those. We have the right of way, it's already ours. Along the upper sections of the Atherton Channel, it becomes much more of a political dilemma in taking private property in order to facilitate returning it to its.
Yeah, and let me also mention, you've seen, obviously they've done a tremendous amount of work and in data, and what you've been seeing today is merely quantity. We've also asked them, because unlike 2001, we're under the regional permit, we've also asked them to comment on water quality as part of their study. So that will be coming out in the next study. And so if I may, thank Dave and Wen and Nona for pulling all this together and And I think, you've raised a lot of intriguing issues that we're going to continue to work on them with over the next 3 or 4 months.
Absolutely.
So if I can make one more comment, please. I think in addition to the graphics, the other thing that might really help residents to understand it once you're at the point of presenting it to them in the next public hearing is if you've got 3 or 5 key projects within it, the discernible projects that you have decided you want to recommend as the priority for the council to look at that may break down into the aggregate $20 million or some portion of that. I think you need to focus on each one of those as a discernible project so that we can understand it, because in today's presentation we haven't had time to look at anything specific. And I think it's good that we get the overview, but when people from the community are going to hear this, they're going to want to know how that project will impact the 10-year flood they experience when they're in the town, on their property or wherever they may be in the town. So I think that to clearly describe each of those projects will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we have a project area or a problem area that could create another problem, which could be something we haven't even considered, we'd like to know that, so if we catch it before it fails, obviously.
Good.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you again.
I'm very interested in learning more about that part.
Perfect.
Next time.
Gordon's projects go last.
He wants to set this agenda.
Hey, your clock's off.
All right, thanks. Thank you. So we're going to move on to item number 2, which is the revenue enhancement alternatives 2. City Manager, Clerk Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This one is going to be primarily given by Robert. He's taking the lead on the revenue alternative enhancement. So he's put together a nice PowerPoint presentation and staff report to walk you through that narrowed list of projects or potential revenue alternatives that the council identified from the last meeting. So, Robert.
I don't have a picture of the water tower.
Well, it's part of our website, actually.
Oh,
That's the
okay.
lead into our website.
I'll use the council chambers next time.
Goofy photos, stand out.
I'm sorry, I was trying to incorporate different themes of the town in different areas, so thank you. As George had mentioned, we discussed, this is the second part of our revenue alternatives. We discussed in March, and this is the second meeting. And revenue diversification is one of the important things that we're looking and exploring on diversified revenue streams, and it's one way to strengthen our core strategy of financial stability. So as we presented the items, these list was narrowed to the following that you see: utility users tax, business license tax, rents and use fees, the document transfer tax, whether we're exploring changes to the rate, and implementation of benefit assessment districts, and the viability of a road impact fee. So one of the first ones that we had recommended, and this was in the staff report, was utility users tax. There are 4 counties and 154 cities that currently implement a utility users tax. And it's based off the consumption of all of utility services. So here's a snapshot of the different cities within the region that offer that. It's Daly City has 5% base across all sectors, excluding sanitation, at 6 million. East Palo Alto is at 5% across all sectors as well, at 1.5 million in revenue. Menlo Park is 2.5 at telephone, 3.5 on the remainder utility services, and that's at 1.1 million. Portola Valley has a 4.5% tax at 723,000. And Redwood City imposes a 4% on telephone, 5% on electricity and gas, 4% on cable, and they exclude sanitation and water. And Redwood City in the region produces 9.6 million their utility users tax. And they use their utility users tax mainly for capital improvement projects within their city. So currently what we currently have is the electricity, cable, and water is current utility services in which we receive franchise fees from. So what we did is we looked into what our current gross revenues were in the last couple fiscal years based on the 3 categories of gas, and electric, cable, and water. So the fiscal year 11 and 12, you can see the gas and electric at 22 million, cable at 1.5, water at 5.2. And going forward, 12 and 13, 13 and 14, so you can see the relation of the gross revenues within this area, and of which we receive a franchise fee. And it's
If we have questions, do you want us to ask as you go on, or do you want to go through?
That's fine, as we go on, that works.
I have a question where you were referring to the rates that the other 5 cities that you referenced have. You had said that city utility taxes range from 1 to 11%. Is that within the county or within the state?
It's within the whole state. That's the norm, 1 to 11%.
Okay.
Currently, right now, Menlo Park they have a cap on their rate, and that's another thing that if we chose to do, is you can put a cap of the utility users tax, and since they have it at 2.5 and 3.5%, currently the council has a 1% utility users tax right now, but they have that cap.
So the examples you gave, the maximum that was 5%, is there anyone in the county that has more than a 5% utility users tax?
No, currently not. Not within our county, or within our
And
area.
just last question, I assume that these tax rates that you quoted are in addition to the franchise fees. Those towns probably get franchise fees just like we currently get.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm glad that Council Vice Mayor DeGoya clarified that, because looking at Menlo Park's revenue, it seemed very low to me, but at the 2.5 and 3.5, but
It's
they're
at
really
three.
not collecting that.
No,
Right.
that's in their ordinance, those are the caps. But what they're collecting at is at 1%, so,
Okay.
good eye.
Is that the same for any of the other ones that you
No.
listed or not?
They're the only ones right now that have a cap. The
Okay.
rest of them, whatever the 5%, whatever their percentage rate is that is what they're currently collecting.
So it just would be helpful, because is Daly City getting 5%, or is that a cap rate as well?
No, they're getting that 5%.
Just because we're not apples to apples, and it looks like Menlo Park's either got no telephone service or.
Everybody's on a cell
I
phone.
think it's 1%.
And these would be landlines, this isn't cell
Well,
phone.
Right.
Their utility users tax is 2.5 and 3.5, but the council has just artificially
Yeah.
reduced it.
Right.
Sort of
Well,
what
they
we
got
did
a lot
with
of
the
pushback.
parcels.
Yes.
When they first implemented it, they got a lot of pushback from residents,
He sure did.
didn't they?
Big time, yeah.
So, yeah.
So out of all these categories, Menlo Park is the one asterisk that is at 1% right now.
Okay.
But everybody else is whatever the current rate is what they are charging.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. So going to the slide with if we enacted a 5% potential scenario, potential revenue from a 5% flat utility users tax using the gross revenues that we have, you could see that across the years from 11, 12 to 12 to 13, 14, it'd be about 1.4 million to 1.5 million that we would get in utility users tax revenue. Obviously, gas and electric would be the majority of that tax based off of usage and gross receipts. Moving on, if we decided, okay, not 5% or whatever, what about potential of 2%? So here's a 2% flat utility users tax and what that would look like. So total across the last 3 years, it would be about 582,000 to about 600,000. So the rate of the utility users tax and applicable utilities are determined by the town. So they're collected as a pass-through by the utility, and the rate is applicable only within this region, this area.
So on the electrical, when they run the meters backwards, and the rulings from the courts have been that you get back the same rate that you pay in. Does that mean we pay back, we
No.
pay them?
Because they have not paid us that. They have not paid us that fee yet. So we shouldn't be having it, we're not giving back a credit of something that they never
We
paid us.
wouldn't,
Might
we
wanna
would just
have
not get it.
Right. We
Because
wouldn't get it.
I think the ruling was, it's the same rate. I mean, if somebody just bought a house, but we should check. That's the only reason I bring it up, is it should be checked, because it didn't go to the courts, because BG&E originally didn't want to pay back the same rate as they were getting. And they were challenged, and so, before we were to consider something like that, we probably ought to run it to the ground, because we don't, Bill's got other things to do.
Yeah, we'll certainly look into that.
And so, it's collected as pass through the utilities. So one of the questions is what kind of tax? There's a general tax or a special tax that we can implement. The majority of the cities have general tax. So general tax meaning that the council can use it at the discretion of just like normal taxes. Special tax means it's for a certain purpose. And another discussion would be supplemental revenue. Is it a revenue supplemental source, or is it a replacement? Are we using it to replace, let's say, parcel tax? So that's another question that comes up in implementing the utility users tax. And also looking at this revenue diversification scenario.
Can you call the tax a fee?
No. So, Robert, when you talk about it being a supplemental tax,
Just spelled differently, that's all.
supplemental revenue source or replacement.
Right.
That's just something that we would decide whether or not and how to present it to the residents, to market the ballot measure or something, but that's not something that we would have to indicate on a ballot measure, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
just the fact that that we're supplementing our revenue or replacing a revenue source, we don't have to make that, it's not a legal requirement
No.
for a ballot measure, it's just a marketing
No, it's part of the-
perception.
Well, I would use the word education.
Education.
Marketing. But educating the public that the parcel tax, the plan for the city council is to eliminate or reduce the parcel tax and supplement or replace it with the utility users tax or